Welcome friends, welcome back to the kitchen, welcome back to Sunday morning in the old cookbook show. Today we're going to do a recipe out of this old cookbook, simply called the Radiation Cookery Book. Now, put out by a company that makes gas stoves and gas ovens. First published in the 1920s when they introduced their Regulo gas oven. And their claim to fame was they were one of the first ones that had a regulated gas flow to control temperature. Except they didn't express temperature in degrees Fahrenheit. They expressed temperature in gas marks. So gas mark 1, gas mark 2. So if you've ever been confused about what temperature to cook something when you see a recipe that uses gas mark 4, you can blame these people. So the recipe we're going to do today is called Haricot mutton. I'm doing this one pretty much for myself. I know that Julie's not going to like it. She doesn't like lamb. She definitely doesn't like mutton, and she doesn't like lamb. I love lamb. Mutton is difficult to get a hold of here. There are a couple of places that you can get it, but it's mostly lamb that's sold here. And I was at Blue Sky, and they had this package of lamb neck bones. Now, the recipe calls for 2 pounds neck of mutton, and then you're supposed to, cut off the chine bone, cut it into chops, and then fry it. These were neck bones that were just chopped into chunks, and it looked like it was what was left over that the butcher didn't want to cut the meat out of. So I took about 20 minutes. And I pulled as much meat as I could off of the bones. And so for $3 and a little bit of work, I was able to get enough meat for a couple of meals for Julie and I. Well, a couple of meals for me. Julie will probably eat something else. Now, calls for dripping. If I had lamb dripping or mutton dripping, that's what I would be using. I don't. I've got a little bit of bacon, so I'm going to use the bacon dripping. I've also got pork dripping and beef dripping, and I kind of went back and forth what to use. The flavor of the lamb is going to overpower everything, so it doesn't really matter. Use any oil. The recipe says to fry the onion first, so let's turn that up a little bit. Let's fry it a little bit more. Now, you don't like lamb, you don't like mutton, you could use any meat that you want. I noticed that on the same page, just one recipe down, is haricot of veal. So, this same method, just swap in a meat that you actually like and make it work. Doesn't say how far to fry the onion, but I'm going to say that's good enough. So I'm going to pull the onion out. That's pretty good. And I'm going to put the lamb in. It says to put the bone in too, because you want to brown everything together. So in goes the bone. Okay, while this is browning, let's talk about turnips. The recipe calls for half a turnip. Turnip is a minefield, an absolute mind-boggling minefield. If I say turnip, most people, including me, the first thing that's going to come to mind is this. It's yellow-fleshed, and it's fairly large. It's larger than a grapefruit, maybe 1.5 times the size of a grapefruit. Often here in Canada, it is waxed to make it last longer in cold storage. It is not a turnip. This is not a turnip. This is a rutabaga. This is sometimes called a swede. It came to the British Isles from Scandinavia and was called a Swedish turnip. It is a cross between various brassicas. It's not a turnip. And it doesn't show up in English cooking, and I'll put the date up on the screen. I'm not going to say it out loud in case I get it wrong, because, the internet goes wild if you say anything wrong. This does not show up until later. And this supplants what was or what is a turnip. Now, this is a turnip. And this is a rough-looking turnip. This came out of our cold cellar, the last one that we have. It is springtime, and this one has seen better days. I'm not going to cook with it because it's past that. But when you cut it open, it's white-fleshed inside, and it's small. It's smaller than an orange. This is a true turnip. This, as a true turnip, was used for hundreds, if not thousands of years in cooking in England. Great crop, easy to grow, stores well, reasonably well. But what happens is when this shows up, the Swedish turnip, which is a cross, it takes over, immediately takes over. And because it was called the Swedish turnip, it just gets labeled as turnip, and it is substituted completely for what is a true turnip. And this leads to much confusion in sort of the transition period. And even today, what are people calling for? Are recipes calling for the true turnip, white-fleshed and small, or are they calling for the Swedish turnip, or rutabaga, which is larger with a yellowy orange flesh? And so during that early transition period where this is just starting to show up in the culinary sense in England and Scotland, I have to go by context. How much are they asking for? There are Scottish soups that today people would swear up and down you would use this, the Swedish turnip. But when you go back into the 1700s, into the cookbooks, they ask for 8 to 10 turnips. So based on the volume of the soup, I know they're asking for this because they hadn't yet started using this. And then the recipes morph, and you can tell that, oh, they're asking for this now and not this. And so there's this changeover in a lot of recipes. Use the one that's easy to get. Use the one that you like. They do have different flavors. They do have slightly different textures because they're different. Okay, I'm going to pull the meat out and I'm going to put it in, or the meat and the bones. I'm going to pull the meat and the bones out. I'm going to put them in with the onions for a moment. Now, in with some flour, and we'll mix that around with the grease. And we want that to brown. And depending on what what meat you're using, whether you're using lamb or mutton, depending on how fatty it is, you may need to add a little bit more oil or dripping. So we're supposed to add the stock in gradually and whisk it together to make sort of a sauce. And bring it to a boiling point. I'm going to switch to a whisk. Recipe says you could use stock or water. If you're new to cooking, a lot of people get confused and they want to follow a recipe exactly, and you should follow a recipe closely the first time you do it. But in this time period and earlier, recipes were super vague because they wanted you to just make do with what you had at home. They didn't want you rushing out to the grocery store to find some exotic ingredient, probably because you couldn't get it anyway. It didn't exist. So why would you try to run out and get it? Everything was very plain, used things that most people would have in their kitchen, their pantry, their cupboard, their cold cellar. And it relied on you as the cook to make your own decisions. So in this case, stock or water. Which were you going to use? And what stock were you going to use? Well, you're going to use the one that you had on hand. Today I had beef stock on hand, and it'll be just fine. If I had chicken stock on hand, I would have used chicken stock. And if I had neither of those, I would have used water, because the chances of me having lamb stock are next to nothing in my own kitchen, or my kitchen now. So you got to make these decisions. And so the next decision is, it tells me to transfer all of this to a casserole dish before we put it in the oven. And I'm kind of looking at this and thinking, I've got this dish, it's got a lid, or this pan, it's got a lid, it's a brazier, it's for this type of thing. Will everything fit? It's going to be tight, but I think it'll all fit. So I might as well use this pan since I've built up all of the flavor in the bottom. Now, before I put everything back in, we're going to hit it with some pepper and some salt. And I'm going to go easy on the salt because it asks for mushroom ketchup. So I've got a jar of mushroom ketchup here. We're going to put that in now. So that is a commercially available mushroom ketchup. I got it from The Oldie English shoppy in town, imported from England here to Canada. Can we get this all into the brazier? So, meat and onions. Rutabaga, or Swede, or Swedish turnip. And carrot. There we go. Oh, that's all going to fit nicely. So I'm going to cover it up. Our oven is preheated to gas mark half. And it says 2.5 hours. So this is a low oven. This is low and slow. Okay, so I haven't yet fished out the bones. So there's meat and veg and onion in here. Now it's not quite as thick as I thought it might be, but there's some other problems with this. Time has changed, and the leaves aren't out yet on the...
So it's sunny.
It's very sunny in the studio.
What do we got today?
So, when I say to you, Julie, we're going to have Haricot mutton.
Okay, my first thing is, because of course I'm not a fan of mutton or lamb. But then I'm like, oh, beans in my lamb stew? How unusual.
Exactly. There are no beans. In a tradition, and I've known this the whole way through, and I'm like, in a traditional...
Actually called Haricot mutton.
Haricot mutton. In a traditional French haricot mutton, there would be beans. In fact, there would be like a white bean.
That makes perfect sense.
Kind of like a navy bean. Different beans in different geographies within France, and different beans within different geographies in France in different time periods. But the theme that holds this together is there should be a bean. But of course, it's lost in transition.
Instead, you filled it with all of my favorites. Cooked carrots.
All the root vegetables, Jules.
Cooked carrots, turnip, and lamb.
And lamb. All the things you love.
I will try it because that is my job. Maybe the mushroom ketchup will save it. I have no idea.
So it is a little bit
I'm fascinated by the mushroom ketchup, though.
I should probably pull out one of the French cookbooks and do an actual haricot from a French cookbook. Much more complex than this. Lots of other flavors, and of course the bean component, but served as a stew rather than what they wanted us to do here, which was put it on a plate and serve it as something a little fancier. But it is very plain. Incredibly plain. I'll be having this for lunch for the next few days. I'll be putting a little extra in it.
It's okay.
Yeah. But let's do a taste test. Okay.
All right, what are we comparing here?
So
I'm intrigued by the mushroom. Oh,
we'll do.
oh, it's very liquidy.
Yeah. So we'll do a
I
little
was
bit of.
expecting it less liquidy.
Yep. It's not though. Oh, salty.
Uh-huh.
Really salty.
Uh-huh.
Huh. Okay. I'm thinking maybe with a little less salt, but it's going to have the same flavor as this Hendo's. No.
No, it's much, has a stronger acidic flavor to it.
Yeah, sharper acidity.
Yeah.
Lower salt. Mm-hmm. It's bright. It's bright. Okay.
Does it have the same ingredients?
This is vegetarian.
Okay.
And this
So that's why you thought that you
vegetarian.
assumed they would be mushroom based, strongly mushroom based.
Yeah, kind of close. And then how's this open?
Yeah.
It's childproof.
Oh, that might be more than I need. I've now had 5 sets of my daily dose of salt here.
Huh. Okay.
That's sweeter.
Yeah.
Interesting.
So they're all three of these are in the same ballpark, but they each have a different distinct feature that separates them. But with how little you can taste in this dish, I think you could substitute any of those.
Or just add more. Yes.
Yes.
Well, I kind of like the mushroom one. I kind of like the non-acidicness of it. Mm-hmm. Although I would definitely remove any other salt from the recipe.
Yes. Although this isn't oversalted because there's so little of this. I put so little in.
Yeah.
So, Haricot mutton, not Haricot mutton. Haricot mutton adjacent. Haricot mutton minus the Haricot. Lost in translation.
Is this a community cookbook?
No, this
Okay.
this is a corporate cookbook
Okay.
to sell ranges.
I can just imagine though that if someone gave you a recipe called Haricot mutton and you didn't know what a haricot was and you didn't like beans, you just take it out.
You'd never put them in.
You just take it out. Like why wouldn't you, right? But you just don't change the name.
So at some point in the future, we'll make a more Haricot-y Haricot mutton.
Oh, great.
Thanks for stopping by. See you again soon. Thank you, everyone, for making it to the end of the video and for hanging on to watch this next bit. As in past years, in 2026, I will again be raising money for Hope Air. Hope Air is a charity here in Canada that connects people in need of medical care or medical treatments with transportation to get from where they live to where the treatment is available. In Canada, healthcare is universal. Healthcare is freely given to anyone who steps up and says, I need treatment or I need care. The problem exists in the way, the sheer size of Canada's geography and the way our population is distributed. There are some people who live in areas that are underserved by healthcare. And they need to travel to the larger centers, be it Vancouver, Edmonton, Calgary, Toronto, Winnipeg, Montreal, Halifax, or St. John's. There are people who live in Canada's north or in more remote areas where getting to one of those centers to get treatment, be it cancer treatment or ongoing operations for some other health concern, getting to those centers is incredibly difficult, incredibly stressful, especially if it's a child that needs this health care. There are places in Canada where you could be driving 10 or 12 hours to access the treatments that you need. There are places in Canada where there is no road access. You may live in a town that is fly-in only. So what Hope Air does is utilize private pilots like myself who volunteer their time to fly to some of these locations, pick up people, and bring them to the treatment that they need. Or at least bring them to a larger center where they can get on a commercial flight, again, provided by Hope Air, to the city where the treatment is available. And for parents who are bringing their children for this type of healthcare, Hope Air also has partnerships with hotels where they can provide hotel stays for the parents during this, stressful time. For those of us that live in the big cities in Canada, this is something that we don't really think about. But there was a time where Julie and I lived in Northern Ontario, and we lived in towns and villages where, it was 3 hours just to drive to get to a grocery store, let alone drive somewhere where complex medical care could be given. And we were very cognizant of that when we lived there. I'm in the incredibly fortunate position that I can make a change, that you can help make a change. Last year, my viewers, you, donated $40,000 to Hope Air. That's an incredible amount of money. That really changed lives. That helped a lot of people. And I'm so thankful to you that you would open up and do that. It's absolutely incredible. And so for 2026, I'm hoping that we can do that again. In August of 2026, I will again be participating in Give Hope Wings, which is where a bunch of pilots like myself, we go out and we fly around and we raise awareness and we raise money and we sort of put a spotlight on the fact that this charity exists and this need exists and this gap needs to be filled. And so this summer we're going to the East Coast. Some of the highlights are Halifax, St. John's, Newfoundland, Goose Bay, Labrador. Then we're on to Rimouski and Trois-Rivières and ending up again in Sudbury. So I hope you'll come along with me over on the Flying Channel on that trip. Julie and I will be making it this year, and hopefully you will enjoy coming along with us. And if you can donate money to Hope Air, I thank you very much. I also understand that if you don't live in Canada, you may not feel a connection to this. I would hope that you you could find something in your community that you could help out with. I think that we really need to be a community of people that help each other. That's the only way through this, is to help each other and to give of our time to those that need it. So I thank you very much. So I will put all the links for Hope Air and everything they do in the description box below. Please check them out. And I thank you in advance for however you can help.